Welcome back to part 2 of this video. Before we get into it, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who has watched part 1, everyone who liked and subscribed. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much, guys. So you don't need to watch part 1 first, but it will make a lot more sense because I'm going to be talking about some manipulative tactics and not explain what they are in this video, but they're explained in part 1. So it's probably better to watch part 1 first, then come back to part 2. And one last thing, if you hear any sort of heavy breathing in this video, it's my dog. He's sitting right over there, but he's really sick today, so I didn't want to leave him alone. But yeah, it's not some creep in the shadows in the background, it's my dog. Everything I say in this video is just my own opinion. None of it is fact. It's just kind of conjecture from what I think of the things that I've seen online so far. And again, in no way am I trying to diagnose anyone or insinuate that someone should have a diagnosis whatsoever. I'm merely just drawing some parallels of manipulative tactics. So the first manipulation tactic we're going to talk about today is something called mirroring. Mirroring, basically, as humans, we all do it. That's how babies learn. That's how they kind of navigate the world. So they'll mirror the caregiver's emotions, like the smiles, the tones of voice, facial gestures, body language. We all do it as babies, and we need that because it helps us to create a sense of self. It gives us validation for our feelings. And then in adult life, we do still mirror to a certain degree. When you first meet, people in your life, friends, coworkers, whatnot, I think everybody probably mirrors to a certain degree. We will like subconsciously copy people's facial gestures. We'll subconsciously copy even sometimes how people talk. If you're around people, say, with a specific accent, you might start to pick up some of their accent in a really short space of time, even though your accent is completely ingrained, but it's a kind of a subconscious level where you begin to mirror someone. And it's usually done to connect with someone, to form a bond. And that's a healthy way to mirror. The difference when a manipulative person is using mirroring is that it's being used as a manipulation tactic, and it's most prominent during the love bombing phase. For an explanation of love bombing, just check out part 1 of this video. So manipulative people high in the narcissistic spectrum, they will tend to use mirroring because they don't have a strong sense of self or a good self-image, if at all. It might be very weak, or it just might not be existent at all. So the way they kind of navigate the world is just by mirroring other people. The purpose of mirroring in these manipulative people is, in that moment, it helps them feel a sense of self-esteem and self-worth. So that's kind of where they get it from, because it's not there, or it's very minimal if it is there. So they need to mirror other people to get that. And again, this is due to, not always, but often it's due to not having that mirroring experience as a little baby with parents, possibly, parents who are narcissistic would never mirror healthily with their infant. So as the manipulative person grows older, their mirroring is skewed. So the only way they know how to connect with people emotionally in a kind of facade, because it's not a real connection, is to just copy or mirror what the person is doing there and then. That's all they know how to do. So if you're the victim of mirroring, it feels kind of amazing. I'm not gonna lie, it feels like you have met this person, whether it's friend or a romantic partner, that you've met this person that just gets you and gets everything about you. You have the same likes, you have the same dislikes, you think the same, you might wear the same clothes, you might like to go to the same places. It's crazy how similar that you guys are. And in a romantic relationship, you would think, oh my God, I've found my soulmate. This is insane. And for a friendship, you could think, oh my God, this is the best friendship I've ever had. I'm going to be so loyal to this person. They really get me. But the reality is their instability of their sense of self is present, and they're essentially using you to kind of stealing your sense of self temporarily to fill them up. So they seek out their identities, their sense of self from someone else through mirroring because they don't have their own. And in relation to romantic relationships, the manipulative person is not able to create like an intimacy connection. So they just mirror the intimacy that their partner is exhibiting. And of course, they mirror to keep control of the person, whether it's friendship, whether it's romantic, whether it's family, whatever. It's going to keep control of the person, because if you've started this relationship, no matter what context it's in, and it's amazing at the start, you're going to want to hold on to that person, even if it starts to go bad, which it always does with manipulative people. But you're going to want to hold on to it because of this amazing experience at the start and how well you guys connected. So that's why it's quite powerful. And when it happens to you, you might not even be aware that it's happening, because it's just such an amazing feeling for it to happen. Eventually, in all relationships with manipulative people, mirroring becomes obvious eventually when you kind of realize what type of person that you're dealing with. And when you think about it logically, if someone has told you that they like all the same things you like, or they dislike all the same things you dislike, and a lot of that is untrue because it's mirroring, eventually that's kind of going to come to light that clearly they were just talking shit, right? So a great example of this from the CreepShow art case, and actually my own personal experience in a romantic relationship I'll give as well. But firstly, the CreepShow art case, the major example from this is the stalking Amy, the stalker. So CreepShow art, aka Shannon, has claimed, conveniently enough, that she had a stalker for years and years and years. And she claimed this after speaking to Emily, who was, ironically, being stalked by Shannon, aka CreepShow art. So in this context, Shannon was mirroring Emily. Even though Shannon was actually Emily's stalker, she was still mirroring Emily in terms of Emily being stalked, to form a connection or a bond with Emily, to try to elicit control over her. Because if we feel like we're connected to someone or we bond with someone, we don't want to view them as people, as bad people, as people that we wouldn't get on with, which starts to create like a cognitive dissonance, which again is explained in part 1. And of course, in this example, there is also the supply, again explained in part 1, that CreepShow art would have gotten from just interacting with Emily. So remember, supply can be positive or negative. It doesn't matter to a manipulative person, as long as it is any form of essentially like attention, admiration, or even disgust. It doesn't matter, as long as they're getting it, it's a form of supply. So the mirroring in that instance had 2 functions. The first was to form a bond, a connectedness that Emily kind of feels like, oh, we're actually kind of similar. Maybe she's not as bad as I thought, creating that cognitive dissonance. And second, CreepShow art still gets some supply from Emily due to this interaction.
I get where you're coming from with the accusation. I have been harassed by a girl who catfished me for about 12 years now. I find that really interesting because 4 months after this, she made her I was stalked, for 8+ years story time. I know exactly how long I have been stalked by you, Shannon. I think it's weird that you put 8+ in your title when you tell me 12 years. Why wouldn't you just say, I have been stalked for 12 years in your title? I don't know. I just thought that inconsistency was interesting. Shannon continues, to the point where she tried to convince my mom I was a cam girl and photoshopped nudes of me. See, I find things like this interesting because I was a cam girl for a short period of time. And I also, by Shannon or Andrew, had my nudes sent back to me, photoshopped, like in a mocking way, making fun of my body. Shannon continues, I wouldn't do that to someone else. It doesn't feel great, and it led me to trying to kill myself back in the day. Shannon and Andrew absolutely knew the anguish and the stress and the anxiety they inflicted upon me from stalking me, and they knew that it drove me to the brink of suicide a number of times. So I can't speak to Shannon's mental health and what she has been through, but when she brought that up, it literally felt like she was taking a burning hot poker and stabbing me in an open wound.
And then my example from a relationship that I was in, it's actually a really small example on the scheme, on the grand scale of things. But I was in a romantic relationship before with a person who had narcissistic personality disorder. I found that out after I was in a relationship with him, by the way. And one example there is, I remember when we first met, the love bombing and the mirroring, and it was all great, and oh my god, he was like the best person ever. And I remember one of the things we were talking about our favorite drinks and food and stuff, and I said that I really liked whiskey, and he said, oh my god, I love whiskey too. And he was like, that's my favorite drink as well. And then I noticed, and it was only afterwards when the relationship finished, reflecting back, whenever we had went out or even say had some couple of drinks in the house, never once did he ever get whiskey. And I thought that was really weird. I was like, that's meant to be your favorite drink. And I would have whiskey every single time. And he never had it. And when I, after the relationship and when I became a lot more aware, that was some time ago now, but when I became a lot more aware of manipulation tactics, I was like, oh my God, that actually makes sense. That it wasn't his favorite drink. He was just mirroring what my favorite drink was to form, part of the bond and connection amongst lots of other things. But that was just one example. So the next manipulation strategy or tactic that a manipulative person might use, again, consciously or subconsciously, is called triangulation. Triangulation is, again, a psychological mindfuck, really. Basically, it pits two people against each other. It creates a chaos with two people, and obviously the manipulative person being the third. And then throughout this chaos, the manipulative person is able to gain control over the situation because they're the ones that have created the chaos in the first place, thus being able to get supply from it. So triangulation can occur with friendships that involve manipulative people, with romantic relationships, with family members that involve manipulative people. For example, in a family, there's often, with a narcissistic parent, there'll be like a golden child and a scapegoat child, and they're often triangulated with a narcissistic parent against each other. So the kids are kind of pitted against each other. They don't trust each other either, which is actually really sad. One is always so favored by the narcissistic parent and one is not. So the golden child would tell the narcissistic parent everything and like rat out the other, the scapegoat child. Whereas a scapegoat child obviously wouldn't want to tell the narcissistic parent anything because they just get in trouble for, seemingly nothing. So then the children kind of turn against each other. So it's pretty nasty. In a romantic relationship, they might let you know a lot that their ex-partner or partners want to get back with them. Or they might talk a lot about specific people from work of the same sex or mixed sex, whatever the manipulative person's sexual preference is. They might talk about them a lot. Or if you're at a work gathering with your partner, the manipulative person will be talking to this person for enough time for you to notice that they're talking to that person a lot more than they are other people. So it's creating that kind of sense of insecurity that you're unsure what the hell is going on. You're essentially being pitted against this other person, and then you start to question yourself, like, oh my God, they're so much better than me, obviously, because my partner, the manipulative person, wants to talk to them. They don't want to talk to me. With triangulation, it can be subtle or it can be quite like out in the open for everyone to see. So I think that depends on the manipulative person and where exactly the people are in their relationship with the manipulative person. Like, for example, if they were still in the love bombing phase, they're probably going to be toning down the triangulation quite a bit. There still might be a little bit of it, but it will be minimal. Because if they did that, then it's going to kind of ruin the whole concept of, oh, this person's perfect. Oh my God, like I love them so much and we're so alike and everything's great. So yeah, it would kind of ruin that whole facade. So triangulation usually wouldn't happen in the love bombing stage. It would happen after the love bombing stage, the devaluing stage. So an example of triangulation may be from Anthony, Shannon's husband, and not actually Shannon or CreepShow art herself. So when I heard it, I thought it was kind of interesting and it reminded me of triangulation. That's kind of what I thought of when I heard it. And it was when he made this song, and he, I think, initially got Shannon, or aka CreepShow Art, to sing in it, and then he showed the song to Emily, and then Emily, you know, it was kind of like, oh, she doesn't sound that great, like maybe I could have a go with it. It kind of made me think, that's interesting. Like, he's pitted the two of them against each other, especially knowing that Shannon would feel a bit insecure about the fact that he's, first of all, showing this to his ex-girlfriend, and then second of all, changing it to his ex-girlfriend instead of Shannon, aka CreepShow. So for me, that screamed a little bit of triangulation.
He sent me an MP3, and I noticed there was already a girl singing on the track. Now, let me be clear and honest right here, right now. I went through a hashtag pick me phase. He sent me the track. I hear the girl's voice. The girl's voice is Shannon's. And I say, man, that girl's voice is weak. It doesn't sound good on the track. My voice would sound so much better. Super catty, super bitchy, and super insecure, immature. There's a million words I could use for what I said about it. So I put Shannon down to raise myself up. And I believe in doing that, that is what set off this chain of events, the stalking, the harassment, the threats. So I made that comment. Andrew didn't really react to it too much. I think he just said, like, wow, you think you're so confident. Like, it was a slightly negative reaction, but he still had me come in and sing on the track.
Another manipulation tactic that these kind of manipulative personality types use is something called flying monkeys. Flying monkeys are basically people around the manipulative person that essentially do their biddings, basically. The manipulative person controls them, and they help the manipulative person further their agenda. Of course, the flying monkeys aren't actually aware that they're being used or that they're under the control of the manipulative person. They will genuinely think, oh God, like, you know, this is my friend or partner or whatever. I'm just gonna, you know, I'm gonna stand up for them. I'm gonna do what's right. But in reality, they're actually being used and controlled just to meet the needs of whatever the manipulative person wants. So they could often get involved in triangulation. They could get involved in smear campaigns, which I'll talk about next. They could get involved in generating more chaos and gossip and things like that. And they would get involved in things like gaslighting. But again, these people don't know that they're flying monkeys. They don't know that they're doing that. So a good example for this is the drama that there was between Hopeless Peaches and CreepShow Art. So after that drama, Shannon had, managed to get a few creators to act as flying monkeys, essentially, because they believed her, and they kind of spread the message that Hopeless Peaches was everything that Shannon said she was, which of course we all know now was complete lies. But those people, unbeknownst to themselves, actually acted as flying monkeys because they furthered CreepShow Art's agenda, aka Shannon, which was to kind of destroy the reputation of Hopeless Peaches. Let's be real, that's what it was. So other people may have made videos, they may have the community tab, put like posts in there about Hopeless Peaches, this, that, and the other, saying they didn't believe her and that they believe CreepShow Art, essentially acting as flying monkeys and creating chaos, making the smear campaign even bigger than what it had to be.
This is an example of a fan acting as a flying monkey for Shannon, aka CreepShow. So the fan says, "Sorry, Peaches, I do not believe you. I think you come off manipulative and I do not like it. I am siding with Shannon." So interestingly, these manipulative personality types will often project what they do and their personality traits onto others. So it's quite interesting that this person has used the word manipulative to describe Peaches. Another example of a flying monkey for Shannon, a fan commented, "Try to make amends with the people you wronged and take a break from the internet, please." And one more, "I hope you fully take responsibility for what's been said about you soon." So all of these comments were in relation to the drama between Hopeless Peaches and CreepShow Art, aka Shannon. And then a YouTuber had actually made a video about hopeless peaches and why she was wrong in this situation with Shannon, aka CreepShow. And of course now the content creator is getting a lot of backlash for it. But I'm not going to put their name in here because I think a lot of the time when people are manipulated or they're acting as flying monkeys, they're unaware that they're doing it. So I don't think it would be fair to include their names. So this is Shannon's, aka CreepShow Art's, response to this video. Thank you for making this. I genuinely didn't know what to do because when this happened to me, I thought it was a me only thing. And I thought maybe on some level I deserved it, playing the victim. I thought maybe it was on me, even though she literally made up negative things to tell people about me, which is literally what Shannon / CreepShow Art is doing, projecting. But knowing that this is a pattern really fucking sucks. And if anyone has a pattern of behavior, it is CreepShow Art. And I'm glad you are talking about this. Thanks, Flying Monkey.
As a victim of flying monkeys, it can be really difficult in terms of gaslighting for the victim of the manipulation to hold on to their own reality. Because if one person is, saying a different story than what you're saying, fair enough. But if a group of people are saying it, i.e. the manipulator and all these flying monkeys, you're more likely to start doubting your own reality and thinking, oh my God, shit, maybe I am wrong. Maybe what the manipulator is saying is right. And maybe I'm the one in the wrong here. Which brings us to our next manipulative tactic, which is the smear campaign. So the smear campaign is basically exactly what it says on the tin. It smears the reputation of a person, and the intent is essentially to destroy them, basically destroy the reputation. And it can be quite extreme. Sometimes it can destroy people's livelihoods, careers. They can have their children taken away from them. It can be really, really, really bad. Smear campaigns can be particularly damaging and hurtful because your friends and even family could be involved in the smear campaign itself without even realizing that they're being used and controlled by the manipulative person. So, for example, if the manipulative person, let's say in a friendship, there's been a fallout and the manipulative person starts spreading complete lies saying that, this friend has beaten them up and stole money from them and is, a bad parent or, endless, basically, abuse, that the worst possible things that someone could be. And the fact that then some of these people who you would have considered friends, family members, believe the manipulative person, you can imagine what that would do to your, trust, not even of those people, but of people in general. It can really change your whole perspective on the world and relationships. And I guess you can imagine, even with the tactics that I've spoken about so far, the effect that they would have on your mental health is insane. It's kind of indescribable, really, in words. So an example from the CreepShow Art drama in terms of the smear campaign is probably pretty obvious. The main one is with Emily. And if you go on the lol cow comments, I'll put some of them up, you'll see, she's just completely dissing her in so many of those comments in an attempt to discredit her and kind of ruin her reputation.
These are some good examples of the smear campaign that Shannon, aka CreepShow Art, started against Emily Artful and carried on for many years. So this first comment, sorry, it's so small on the screen. It says, Emily Artful uploaded 2 videos trying to explain her absence, when in reality she left because her views are terrible. Before she left, she was tweeted and deleting about how bad her views were because no one wants a podcast of her talking with other artists. People want fake story times from her, and that's it. That's why none of her other content breaks 100k. So she makes a video saying she almost killed her child 2 times because she got him sick. Then when no one cared, pretended it was creator burnout. So she's trying to destroy her reputation as a mother, as a parent, that she has literally tried to kill her own child. I don't think you can get a bigger smear than that. And of course, this isn't what actually happened. So this is a good example of basically trying to ruin someone's reputation and character as a parent. And then this example is trying to ruin her career, so her like financial income. And it says, have you guys seen Emily's shitty jewelry and charms? Like, do people actually buy these? And then a picture of her jewelry, which I think is really cute. So that's her trying to destroy her, could have been only form of income at the time, who knows? So that's an example of trying to take down her career. And this is an example of trying to smear just her general reputation. So it says, no, the cam girling came after she got clean. She was on heroin for a very short while. After that short while, she was on YouTube under the name Emily Sugarfruit. I know this because I was a fan of that channel. And if you find her deviant art at the time, she talks about how she has recently just gotten clean and sober. As Emily Sugarfruit, she reviews anime, dances in a bikini, and did a whole video naked in a bathtub. She also wrote an entire comic based off one piece so she could fuck the main character. Not to mention bully other female reviewers and tell them they weren't hot enough to be as popular as she was. That was what she did on heroin. She then got clean, started to be a cam girl, and then started doing story times, which she said she created and now gets mad at any other YouTuber who tries. She is a cow who likes to pretend she's better than everyone and has her shit together. Definitely trying to ruin her character, her reputation as a whole, by using things like the drug taking, being an ex-addict, and doing cam work. And then another attempt at a smear, trying to make it seem as if Emily is posting on LolCow about herself when, ironically, that's actually what Shannon, aka CreepShow Art, was doing. So again, this is a good example of projection. So she's kind of accusing other people of what she herself is doing. And it says, okay, Emily, we get you want to post this. No one cares.
And not just that example, but it also goes for Hopeless Peaches. She does the same thing for her after their kind of blow up or whatever. She goes on a big smear campaign, just completely dissing her, saying horrible, nasty stuff. And then interestingly, on LolCow, she also disses some other YouTubers that I'm not actually sure if she was friends with, but there was one or two where she disses like D'Angelo Wallace, who has a massive following. And I didn't check this, but I was curious to see if she disses him on there at the same times where because I think it happened last year where he got like a super explosion of subscribers. And I wonder if it came about at the same time, because that would be interesting if it did, from a manipulative person's perspective, to gain control back over that. Shannon, aka CreepShow Art, would have seen, oh my god, this guy has gotten, thousands of subscribers, thousands of views, and that to her would have been a threat to her control, even though it's not directly to her. To her, as a manipulative person, it could have been perceived as a threat to her control. And then to take back the control, her way of doing that was to go on LolCow and then write these like slanderous things like, oh, no one likes D'Angelo Wallace, they all just pretend that we do, and all this sort of stuff. So the next two things I'm going to talk about are more like personality traits that are found in people that are highly manipulative. So these are good to watch out for as potential red flags. So the first one is massive ego. So manipulative people often believe that they are special, that they're superior, that they're like omnipotent compared to the rest of us lowly people. They will have a very strong need for excessive amounts of admiration, because that's what gives their ego supply. They think a lot about themselves, so essentially they think they're better than everyone else, especially the grandiose types. They'll be more out in the open about like that they think like this. But then behind this mask essentially is this fragmented, minimal, if any, sense of self and self-esteem. They're just crushed. It's like they've never developed. It's like that part of them is still a little kid. And if anyone has ever been in a relationship with a manipulative person, friendship or romantic, that'll probably resonate with you, because when you guys have disagreements or, you know, fall out or whatever, their response to it is literally like a toddler, like the silent treatment, you know, like sulking and not speaking to someone for days or weeks on end. And because of this very big ego with this teeny little, you know, smidge of self-esteem and sense of self, if at all, they're super vulnerable to critiques. So they do not like critiques whatsoever. And it's perceived critique. So if they've perceived that you've critiqued them in some way, they're going to be super, super, super defensive. Even if that's not what you meant at all, it doesn't matter as long as they've perceived it to be that way. So one example of the ego I thought was interesting in the CreepShow, saga was, I actually can't remember what video it was that I heard this in. Basically, it was a YouTuber saying that I think Shannon had, aka CreepShow, had went on like holidays for a week or something, and she wasn't doing video uploads, and then she'd got some random like friend of hers to make videos in her absence for her channel. And it's just a really weird thing. I don't think I've ever heard of a YouTuber doing that, because in reality, no one cares if any YouTube content creator is off for a week. Like, who cares? No one would even notice, you know what I mean? But in her head, she thought that her absence would be significant enough to warrant this random guy that nobody knows to come in and friggin' do videos on her channel. It just seems kind of crazy. I think he was, if I remember correctly, he was her friend and possibly her like editor or something, video editor, something like that. But either way, he's not the person that the people subscribed to her channel for. Like, they subscribed for her, not for this random guy. So for her to think such an inflated ego that all her subscribers would want to hear from this guy, because this guy is essentially an extension of Shannon, is insane. Like, that's crazy. But that's a good example, I thought, of how big her ego is. And the next one, as you may have all guessed from this whole thing, is lack of empathy. Everything she had posted on LolCow, complete lack of empathy. And some of those were meant to be her friends. In no way did she care, obviously, or give a shit about what these people would think, like Ready to Glare, what she would think of reading the comments on there. So she did not care how much that would have hurt Ready to Glare. And then the other example, again, goes back to the kind of years of harassing and stalking and abusing Emily, and knowing that Emily was really struggling and suffering and being afraid her kids would be took off her, all of that sort of stuff, and not giving a shit, just keep on going with it and keep making it worse and adding to the chaos, and to not have any shred of empathy for a person in that situation that you're causing, you're the making of it. It kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it? I think people with healthy levels of empathy would never engage in that behavior, because we wouldn't want to hurt someone like that at all, even if we didn't like them or they were our enemies. Even we wouldn't, it just wouldn't be a thing that I think empathetic people would do with normal kind of rates of empathy, because we're able to put ourselves in other people's shoes. We have emotional empathy, which a manipulative person does not, so we can imagine how that would feel for them, and we wouldn't want that to happen to them, even if we dislike them. Whereas a manipulative person only has cognitive empathy, meaning that they can like show the signs of being an empathetic person, whether it's what they say, body language, what they do, but it's like learned. They've learned it from observing people, and then they know when the situation arises where they need to show that type of behavior. So it's not emotional empathy. And lastly, what's really important with all of these examples and with manipulative people in general, there's always patterns of behavior. So the behaviors repeat themselves. So for example, with the silent treatment, It's not a couple just having a fight and not speaking for a couple of hours. It's a tactic used to assert control over a person, and it's used repeatedly when the manipulative person has perceived that someone has wronged them or, you know, critiqued them. It has a function for the manipulative person, and it should be, you know, repeated. It's not a once-off kind of thing. Same for all of the tactics, really. It's not just, you know, gaslighting somebody that one time. It's repeated. It can be gradual over time. It gets obviously worse and worse as relationships progress, whatever type of relationship they are. And eventually the patterns of manipulative people can become really predictable, actually, quite predictable. So there is something that I haven't discussed in this video, but I'm happy to make another video to discuss this and a couple of other personality traits and manipulative kind of tactics that I haven't discussed in either of these two videos. But it's the kind of triangle, basically, of what a manipulative person does. The first step is to idealize the person. That's all the love bomb. And then it's the devalue of the person. And then it will be the discard of the person. And all of these different subsets have different manipulation tactics within them. So they all fall on different places on this triangle. So idealize, devalue, discard. And then they come back, hoover you up again. Another term that I can discuss in another video. And then the same thing goes on, that they will idealize, devalue, discard. Idealize, devalue, discard. It could be days apart that they do this. It could be weeks apart. It could be in one day. It could be years apart. It's important to remember that it's really easy to become bitter and kind of sour over how you were treated, because it can be really horrific. But I think it's important to always approach the situations with empathy, because if we have empathy, we should extend it. And within that, you can extend your empathy to someone from a distance and still have firm boundaries in place. So keep them away, firm boundaries, and you can extend empathy from a distance. It doesn't even have to be directly to the person. You know, it could be talking about them. It could even be in your head when you think of the person. I think it's probably a healthier way to look at it. And on that same thread, I hope that Shannon, aka CreepShow Art, maybe this experience will help her to reflect a little on her behaviors and how they're not really serving her, because that's usually how manipulative people end up in therapy. And that's not just fact or anything, that's just me kind of observing that objectively from things I've seen. They usually end up in therapy because there's problems in their lives, and the problems are affecting them, you know, like their lives, their relationships might be breaking down, and that's problematic to them because, you know, it's inconvenient. Now they have to find another partner, or, you know, they have to find another house or another job or whatever, and eventually that takes its toll on those people too, and they want to learn how to live in kind of harmony with people, so, you know, they don't kind of go through these cycles of every few years basically recycling friends, recycling you know, jobs and partners and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully she'll come to a point where she realizes that what she has done allegedly is damaging to not just her, but of course Emily and everybody else that she's kind of came across. People high on the narcissistic spectrum, it's usually rare for them to be aware of their personality traits or their personality disorder, because often with their sense of grandiosity and ego and all the rest of it, they don't see that anything's wrong. So they're uncommon, I think, to find people who are aware, but that doesn't mean there isn't some. There definitely is. And there's been quite a few who have, you know, went to therapy and turned it around and became much better people for it, you know, because they wanted to make the change. So it's really, really possible. And I hope that something good comes of all of this. In the last video, I gave some tips at the end for people who might be in a relationship with a manipulative person, whether it's friendship, romantic, family, whatnot. And I'm just going to give a couple more of them again, because I think it's really important to highlight tips to keep safe and to be aware of these red flags. So the first one is, if the manipulator has left your life, whether it's through their own or your own doing, if you can, if there's no children involved, go no contact. That is what is recommended. That means blocking them from everything, removing them from everything, so they can never find a way to contact you to gain any sort of supply. This is really difficult, especially because of the chemistry that affects your brain during these relationships and how addictive these relationships are, similar to Class A drugs. It's really hard. I've done it myself. It's incredibly difficult, but you can do it. And in the long run, it's the safest thing to do. Second tip is to keep your boundaries firm and strong. Although sometimes I know it's so tempting to just kind of forgive something for something really horrible because of that love bombing stage in the start, and you want to believe that they're this brilliant person, cognitive dissonance. But keep your boundaries strong. Write down, sometimes I think that helps, what you're willing to accept and what you're willing to not accept in a relationship. And make that known to the manipulator, that these are your criteria and you're going to stand by them. Third tip, stop giving second, third, fourth, fifth chances. One time could be an accident, anyone can make a mistake. Second time, a pattern's starting to emerge. So if something doesn't feel right and you're thinking, okay, things aren't changing, I've forgiven them once, he or she has done it again, that might be your cue to exit out of there. And another tip for recognizing a manipulative person is if people in their past, it's very black and white. Like there's really good people and then there's these horrible shit people, you know, that have wronged them in some way. And the manipulator always seems to be the victim in all of these situations. And a reminder that everything discussed in this video, it's all allegations, so nothing is 100% proven. The evidence is pretty strong that it's true, it's accurate, it's credible, but it's not 100% proven. Anyways, I will stop talking now. Thank you so much, guys, if you made it till the end. I really appreciate it. And if you want a part 3, I'm more than happy to do one. I can talk about some other manipulation strategies and tactics and a little bit more depth on the triangle of, you know, idolization, devalue, discard. And thanks again for everyone who liked and subscribed to the last video. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Have a nice day or night wherever you are in the world. Bye!